In fact, they will be more malnourished than a 9-year-old today. And my friend, you're incredibly wrong. They'll be tinier than a 9-year-old today.
That's your understanding.
Okay, now
I put her to bed. If the Prophet had enemies, people would have called him names, him getting married. This is it. That puts
people did call him names, and he killed them as a result.
What? They called him what?
They called him many names, and he had them killed.
They called him many names,
right?
but did they ever call that P word?
Now, how do I know? No, that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't matter what they called him. It matters what he did, right? Again, I don't care about Muhammad. I am asking you, is it okay ever to marry a 9-year-old?
Now you're saying ever. Now you're looking at the whole thing.
Is it ever okay?
The beginning of the world.
Is it ever okay? Is it good practice? Is it encourageable? Would you do it?
I can't answer that. How am I going to answer
Alrighty.
that? How am I going to
I
answer
say
that
it's wrong.
Because laws were different back then.
I say it's wrong.
That's fine. But I'm telling you, laws were different back then.
So I, for example, will not encourage it.
To get married in this country?
I will not encourage it.
Okay. What's the law in this country?
Okay. So
So you're not speaking about Islam or the law of the land?
when you're factoring the age of marriage into law, right? We at least consider the opinion of health professionals. No health professional will tell you that at the beginning of puberty for either a boy or a girl, that is a good idea for them to get married. Why? Because they're embarking on a 10+ year development cycle that will then end in their 20s. So nobody will tell you to get married at the beginning of a cycle.
Like I said, man, you're taking this thing to another thing. I'm telling you, you don't know how.
What do you want me to say? Okay, now.
Okay, wait. What's the law in this country?
To delve very quickly into Islam, right? So you're telling me I don't know. Wait, one second. You mean yesterday just now? You said I don't know what it was like back then. Okay, fine. Let us say, for brevity's sake, that every single person back then married 2-year-olds. If Muhammad is the Prophet of Allah, why is he joining them in their bad behavior?
Okay, so now what's your question? Now you're saying if they will get married 2 years old, would that be okay?
No, my question is, if everyone was doing it back then, but it's not encourageable today because we know it is wrong and dangerous for the girl or the boy to do that, if they were all doing it and acting immorally in that time period, why would Muhammad join them?
Why would he join them? If
acting immorally.
Yeah, but again, you're doing that thing where you're comparing the time.
Muhammad is supposed to be the best example for the Ummah for all time, including today.
He is, but you're doing that thing. You're going back 1400 years ago, 1500 years ago. You're comparing.
The Quran tells me to do so.
9 years old. Where are you from? Are you from UK, man? Have you seen people in other countries? How girls are in other countries?
It's not good. It's bad. It's bad. It's bad. It's bad.
You should look up. A 9 years old in another country, in a third world country, is mature than a girl.
No, wait. Wait a second. Ali, here is the issue. Yes, maybe potentially in other countries there might be girls and boys.
It's like you're answering, but you're going back to the same question.
Ali, in certain countries in the world, there may be girls and boys who have to assume higher responsibility because of circumstances they can't control. However, development-wise, they don't grow faster if you're in, like, I don't know, like somewhere in India compared to here.
Honestly, how do you know the development back then was different? How do you know about all this stuff?
A 9-year-old.
So, wait.
I'm saying development-wise, he said about how do you know?
9-year-old's a 9-year-old.
Look, who can...
0 to 9.
1,000 years ago, were they humans? 1,000 years ago, were they humans on the planet?
9-year-olds were 16-years-olds. 1,000 years ago.
No, I'm not.
You're justifying it. You're justifying.
I'm not just.
Ali.
I'm not justifying it. You don't understand what I'm saying.
Ali, 1,000 years ago.
You can't rewind all the way 1,500 years ago. A 9-year-old was a 9-year-old the way it is today.
Yes.
It was even worse. They were even tinier.
Proof of that. So there you go, mate.
Brother.
What was a 9-year-old 2,000 years ago?
I don't know. You tell me.
A 9-year-old.
I don't know the answer, but you know. What in the Bible says the 9-year-old 2,000 years ago.
I can give you an example.
I'm not coming
There you go.
from
Ali.
I'm talking about biology.
There you go. If you don't have the answer,
years ago, this
Ali.
is a 9-year-old. A 9-year-old.
Ali, I can give you an answer very
is a
easily.
9-year-old. A 5-year-old, a 9-year-old, yeah, in 5,000 times, if they're 9 years old, they'll be 9 years old. It doesn't matter.
And you don't think the mindset is going to be different?
The mindset doesn't
9-year-old
matter.
is 9.
It doesn't matter.
How do you know that? How do you know
What do you mean?
It doesn't matter.
Anyways, I'm going
How old are you?
to
How old are you?
Ali,
How old are you? How old are you?
It doesn't matter.
How old are
It's
you?
irrelevant.
How old are you?
Let me answer.
How old are
Would you
you?
marry a 10-year-old?
How do you know how old you
Like,
are?
10-year-old.
he's got to ask me a question.
How do you know how
marry
old
a
you
5
are?
years old?
I will never do that.
Okay, there you go then.
Would you marry a 9-year-old?
Again, you're doing that thing.
he already said no. He already said no.
Because time has changed. But back then, my
Okay.
brother, it was normal. It was a normal longevity and all
see
this
that,
stuff.
bro.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
LGBT.
If you don't think it, that's fine.
All right, Ali.
I'm telling you, that's how it was back then.
Nowadays,
right?
nowadays,
I see a
transgender is
9-year-old as a
normalized. Is that
9-year-old.
okay?
Look it up in history. Longevity back then, people
And
didn't
history
live
will
that
tell a
long.
9-year-old 2,000 years ago was 16.
People are very long.
Ali,
Longevity, do you understand?
You don't need to
The
defend
girls
this.
were getting married at a younger age,
Yeah,
right?
so?
Yeah. So
Still 9.
Yeah, so you're doing that thing again, 9 years old. Again, you're comparing the time back
can't
then.
get away
and
with
now.
You don't
If
need
you
to
ask me,
defend
would I marry a
this.
9 years
You're
old
born at
today?
0.
Would I marry a 9 years old today? Of course not. But back then it was normal. And I put it to bed and I told him, did the Prophet have any enemies? He goes, yes, Prophet had enemies. So how come none of the Prophet ever called him a pedophile? Because it was normal, my friend.
I'm not
That's
100 years ago.
not
I'm not
good.
Listen, are you English? Are you English, my friend?
That's not a
Alright,
good
listen,
argument.
100 years ago, yeah, girls in this country.
That's not a good argument.
All right, Christianity, Islam, put them aside.
Because technically, Muhammad had slaves.
In this country,
And none of his enemies ever called him a slave owner.
that's a different topic.
No, it's the same thing, right? No, again, just because no one called him out for his bad behavior doesn't mean he didn't do it.
There's a difference.
Now you talk about hadith. I don't know about
The only
hadith.
reason I said something like that is I heard a 9-year-old.
Ali.
No, I don't know about hadith and stuff like that.
Ali, we can come to a very easy end on this, right? You don't
I
have,
know hadiths and all that.
You should be. You're meant to.
Ali, it's this simple. You don't have to defend
Sunnah.
this.
You're meant to obey the
If I
Sunnah.
tell you I don't know something, I don't know something. But at least I'm respectful. I'm telling you I don't
This
know
is why
something.
he's-
But I'm not gonna make up lies like you guys do.
We're not making up lies, Ali. It's all coming from your own sources. Right? Ultimately, Ali, it's this simple, Ali. You don't have to defend this. You don't have to, right? You can simply say it's wrong. It's fine.
Look, 100 years ago, yeah.
I'm not.
You're giving hadith. You want me to give you? You want me to quote your Bible? You want me to quote something from the Bible?
Go for it if you want to. That's fine.
Stick with one topic. He's asking the question. That's fine. Look, I don't expect you to understand that, right? Fine, right? I'm telling you what it is. That's it. It is what it is.
Here's the problem, Ali. You're defending something that's indefensible, right? You're not supposed to defend this stuff. It's clearly bad, right? So just because you follow a person who did these things, okay, now, here are the two problems with that. Your Quran tells me to do this. Your Quran tells me that Muhammad is the best example for the Ummah for all time, including this time.
Does the Quran say
right?
that you should get married to a 9 years old today?
Okay, now, the Quran tells you that it's okay for you to divorce somebody who hasn't yet gone through puberty. So, who doesn't go through puberty?
That's not what I asked.
People who are
Now
below
you're talking about
9 years
divorce
old,
now. Right?
right?
You're asking about
No,
divorce.
so you see, if the Quran tells me that I can divorce somebody who hasn't yet gone through puberty, what does that mean? That I'm marrying somebody who hasn't yet gone through puberty. Normally, those are kids.
I don't know about all that stuff.
Okay,
right?
well,
let's stick
you
with
asked me if the Quran told you. I'm telling you what the Quran
No, but
says.
what was my
Okay.
question just then? That's you're talking about.
You asked me if the Quran allows you to marry a 9-year-old,
Yes.
and I am telling you that the Quran allows you to divorce somebody who hasn't yet gone through puberty. So what would be the primary cause for somebody not going through puberty yet? They haven't reached that stage in the development.
Yeah, but the main thing, look,
Right?
I get that, right?
Okay.
But you're missing the main
So Ali, again, I'm trying to tell you, you don't need to defend this. It is clearly wrong. It is clearly evil.
Listen, I'm not
When-
defending because I'm a Muslim. I'm not defending
Well,
because
you
I'm a Muslim.
you are.
I'm defending this because
I
it's just
guarantee
logic,
you,
my friend.
if you take a poll of
It's logic,
people,
my
right,
friend.
who aren't Muslim, 0 of them will defend this. But somehow, when you get to the Muslims, they all want to defend it.
Listen,
Do I have any non-Muslims here by any chance? Anyone? Is it okay to marry a 9-year-old?
Sorry?
Is it okay to marry a 9-year-old?
Back
Okay,
then,
cool.
Back then.
All right,
Not 9 years old today. I'm saying back then.
Is it okay to marry a 9-year-old 10,000 years ago?
Without religion being involved or anything. Yeah, this is just age. We're just talking about age.
Look, if I marry a 9-year-old 10,000 years ago, right, and then I sleep with them, and then they get pregnant, right, the likelihood of them dying is really, really high.
I'm not agreeing with him.
No,
but
I'm just saying.
10,000 years ago was a long time. I haven't gone even long. But I'm not agreeing
The
with
problem, so now, the problem with 1,400 years ago or 10,000 years
But
ago,
I get your point because they see him as a role model that's timeless.
Muslims.
But
I
I
said,
get
you know
that
what?
point of view.
Subhanallah.
So,
Simple.
but
Simple.
for me, it's not like some behavior I'd follow.
Transgender.
Definitely
It's
not.
okay. It's good to do it.
Simple.
It's okay
Yeah, but in your
to
church,
Simple.
do you have a problem?
That's it.
We don't agree with that.
But unfortunately, because he's a Muslim, he has to defend this stuff.
LGBT thing group into the
That's
mosque.
all.
You see what happened?
And I would hate to be in that
You
scenario.
guys not doing anything about it.
We're not violent.
I would hate to be in that scenario. That's
You're
horrible.
saying, you're missing the point.
And,
if they're
Ali,
bringing all these drag
then-
queens and that dance in your church, right? You guys should do something. Well, of course you're going to say you don't agree with
not
it.
being
I could do the same thing. We don't agree
We
with
don't agree
it.
with the point.
But the thing with us, right? We
Drag
have
queens, where do we go?
Anyway, he's asking me something else about it.
The last thing I'll say on this, Ali, is
fine. We
the
could
problem
agree to
remains.
disagree. We could
Well,
agree to
no. Here's the issue. If you go back further in history, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, you will find that people were very, very malnourished and tiny, right? Do you want to have proof of this? For example, we're here in England, right? There's many old buildings here that are hundreds of years old. For example, St. Paul's Cathedral, right? The higher you go in St. Paul's Cathedral, the older it is, right? Because it's been like redeveloped multiple times. I've been to the top of the spire. They have doors up there, right? But do you know how tall the doors are? This tall. I had to bend down to go inside of it, right? Now, why is this? It wasn't for kids, but it was for fully grown men who were working on the building. So if only 500 years ago, the average height of a man in Britain was 5'5", can you imagine in the deserts 1,400 years ago how big a 9-year-old would have been?
Not really, because there was another period.
there is not
According
much
to Islam,
to
there was a period where there was of the giants. There was in the time of one of the prophets.
Make
there was a time of
believe.
giants, right?
That's all make
That's fine,
believe.
but that's
That-
not religion,
that's
right?
make believe, right?
But also,
That's make believe.
Also, our prophet Muhammad.
Because
peace be upon him-
show me
Well, let me
one giant bone.
But let me
One.
tell you, right? Do you know anything about Umar? Right? Umar was a big guy.
Yeah, a big guy in his time was probably like a small guy in our time, because they didn't have ample access to foods and proteins that would let them grow large. For example, even today,
No, but-
are Arabs
but
the
you're
biggest people on the planet? Even today? No.
No.
So imagine even back then. It's probably even worse.
Well, you can't say that as a whole thing. Like people. Like,
What causes growth? Nutrition.
Yeah, I know, but you can't say as a whole thing that people was tiny back then. You
They
can't say
were
that.
probably very, very
I
small back
disagree.
then.
I disagree. But anyways,
Okay.
it's fine.
Were any of the Sahaba 7 foot tall? Any of them? Any? This is just one.
Not that I know of, no.
Okay. You know why?
But because we don't have everything of how tall would this person. That's not the point. Of
Is
the
there
whole,
any reference? Was any of them as tall as a camel?
I don't know
Anything?
about stuff like that, about hadith and stuff. Like that,
Okay.
I'm not sure.
The problem, my friend, is that wherever you go, even when you supposedly have Muhammad's clothes in museums in Saudi Arabia,
Yep.
tiny.
Yeah. I wouldn't say it's tiny, but okay.
Well, for a fully grown man, right? You're basically probably bigger than him. Likely, he was probably 5'5" or below.
No, it wasn't.
He likely was.
It wasn't.
How
But
tall was
okay.
he?
I don't know how tall he was, but he wasn't below 5'5" or 5.
How would you
5 or
know
6.
that? That was probably
No, but
like average back then.
We're going back there.
Okay.
You're going to
now,
one person.
now,
If it's not
my
him, then
my,
I
over,
don't think
my
that.
overall point will be that if you go back further in time, people were tinier. So if you go back further in time and you're marrying 9-year-olds, that's even worse.
So you think 9 years old back then was small?
Was even tinier, even more malnourished, even
Right,
more
that's
unhealthy than a 9-year-old today.
Because of the doors back then was small.
That's just one indicator of how big men were. Men, not even girls. Men.
According to us thing, it wasn't men wasn't small. They weren't tiny. They weren't short.
How about you?
Everyone's different. Like in here, look, you're a tall guy, right?
Would I be this tall if I was born 1,000 years ago? Probably not. I wouldn't have the
But you can't
right
say that.
amount of calories.
Yeah, but you can't say that you won't be that tall 1,000 years ago. It depends on your genes as well.
Look at the
It depends on
average
your
height
genes as well.
of anybody from that time period. For example, even here in this country, one of their very early kings was 6 foot tall, and they called him a giant because he was 6 foot tall. 6 foot.
6 foot what?
6 foot. That's it. Today, who would you call a giant who's 6 foot
Well,
tall?
it depends, doesn't it? 6'5", 6 foot.
Because everybody else
7 foot
was
maybe,
way
yeah.
smaller than him, and now the standard has risen. So now for you, 7 foot tall is giants. So again, you do not have to
I mean, you make
defend
a good
the
point. I'll
idea.
give you that. That's a good point.
Okay.
But like I said, back then, 6 foot, it was considered giant, right?
Yes,
Let's-
and
let me
this
just say I
was,
agree. Let's just say I
this
don't-
was in the 1000s,
Okay.
right? So you don't have to back up the idea or defend the idea that somebody slept with a 9-year-old and back then it was a good thing. It
No,
was a bad
now
thing
you-
then,
yeah.
it was a bad thing then, it's a bad thing today. So if you're participating in it, and I am meant to follow you as an example for all time, I can't do that.
That's fine. That's fine. I'm just saying that you could agree to disagree, right? It's up to you. If you want to believe that, that's fine. But like I said, it's no.
Nah, you know what? I'll be honest. I agree with him, but I see where you're coming from. If people in the community, it probably wasn't immorally wrong back then. But I agree.
But you're a prophet.
Okay, no. So,
Right?
yeah, so that's where he's coming from.
There's
He's meant to be an
difference between
example
people and that prophet.
Thank you. That's
for time.
Yeah.
But then why would he do it in that time? And I see why he's asking that.
Yeah.
Because he's meant to be a timeless for everyone.
Because
Yeah.
I can give you examples of prophets in the Bible who their people were doing one thing and they didn't follow them doing it. So, for example, with Moses, his people worshipped idols. He didn't follow them and do it
Yeah,
because everyone was doing it back then.
I'm with you.
Prophets
on that.
need to
I'm
stand
with
at a
you on
higher
that.
standard than everybody else.
No, I'm with you on that.
If anything was wrong back then, yeah. Like for example, Sodom and Gomorrah, right? We have the story very similar to that, right? So obviously that land was full of gay people, right? Homosexual people. So obviously it was wrong. So obviously God sent messengers and all that stuff, and then obviously the punishment came, right? Long story short, punishment came, and then obviously I don't know what you guys believe about.
Roughly
How
the
God
same.
destroyed, yeah.
Roughly the same.
Obviously we believe the same thing, right? The whole land got destroyed, right?
But do you see what the issue is? Your example is basically telling me that if Muhammad was there at the time, he would have just done it as well because everyone was doing it.
When you look into it as well, when he asked, it was Abu Bakr's thing, and you took Aisha, right? Of course, right? So
Aisha
when he
is
asked
the main
her
example.
hand in marriage, right?
She didn't say anything, apparently, and her silence was
Right,
seen as
but what-
compliance, which is even that's horrible.
So that's how you look at it, right?
And
But
also,
anyways,
she was
but
6,
also-
not 9, so it's even
yeah,
worse.
When did he consummate the marriage? And
Allegedly,
Wait.
when she was 9.
Why-
However,
But why do you think it
there's two explanations according to your tradition. Number one was that Abu Bakr took a while to give him his bride price. And it took 3 years before that. And then the other one is that in some of your fiqh books, depending upon your madhab, it's okay to marry a child and then you can do certain activities with that child in preparation of getting them ready for consummation. And I'm not even going to say what that is, but it's exactly.
Well, I'm
It's
telling
nasty.
you, there's a reason why he
nasty.
waited before he.
Yeah.
he
Well,
went-
none of those reasons that I've seen so far had to do with the idea that she wasn't, that it was best for her health. Essentially, is what I'd say.
But can I ask something, right?
Go ahead.
Aside, right? 100 years ago in UK, right? When
Yes.
when guys were getting married to girls who were very young, what do you think?
Okay,
of that? Was that wrong?
100 years ago, guys were not getting married to girls who were very young in the UK.
Yeah, maybe 10 years old, 11 years old, however old they were, but they were
Okay,
young. They were young.
so that's the first thing, right? It wasn't
Was that
happening that
wrong?
way.
Was that wrong?
And we have charters to even show you that wasn't happening that way. Now, over time, as we have learned more about human biology and the ways in which we develop, we have gradually increased the age of marriage or the age of procreation, right? Because we're finding out that actually doing it earlier is not good for you. It's bad for your health and it increases mortality, aka death, of both the child and the mother. Why do you think, for example, in the last 100 years, as we've been increasing the age of marriage / sexual activity, that in tandem, our population has skyrocketed? Because now people aren't dying anymore in mass from having
People have more longer life now.
right,
People
right.
live
But
over 100 years and stuff.
despite that, people aren't dying early anymore from childhood marriages. That activity is now relatively small compared to what it was 100 years ago, for example. So
But was that wrong?
it's
Was that wrong?
it's wrong.
Yeah.
It is wrong.
So guys,
And
English guys
To
that
be
will get
devil's
married-
advocate, I don't think that's a reason for why.
in order for populations to rise,
No, but because the population rise, I don't see what's that got to do with the people marrying them when they were younger.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
if you're marrying somebody when they're
no,
young,
I just mean there's not like a direct correlation.
there is. So yes,
No, you could use it like it might be a factor.
yeah.
Like, but it's not like
Absolutely.
firm.
Food, hygiene, medicine play a factor,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
Exactly.
However, at the same token,
Yeah.
if you have all the food, all the hygiene, all the medical care you want,
Yeah.
if you're marrying kids and making them pregnant, it is still going to have a very high chance of ending either the mother or the child dying.
Yeah. No.
So even despite all those advances, if you're making kids pregnant, it's not good for you. The society,
For me, the reason why I wouldn't do it, I just on the inside wouldn't feel right.
It's
no,
nasty.
But my point
Yeah.
is this: that I wouldn't even be thinking about all of that other stuff. The reason why someone wouldn't do it today is because you just feel it's wrong.
Because you have a higher moral standard than he does. That's why.
No, but then you said he agreed. No. But he said he agreed he wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
So
Now,
you can't say I had
No,
He said he wouldn't do it. Yeah.
You do.
The other guy said, would I marry a
Because
9 years old today? I said no.
one second, Ali.
Of course you wouldn't.
Your standard of
Back then,
morality
it was normal.
comes from the gurus.
That people
What do you
would
mean
do
by
back
was
then.
not?
But his comes from Muhammad.
Okay. No, so you're basically comparing the gurus to Muhammad.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's incomparable.
It's a time
Okay, but that doesn't mean I got higher moral standards than him.
Thank you.
Well, that's a
No,
hierarchy.
it
That's a
does.
hierarchy.
because you're-
No, what do them two,
That's a hierarchy.
what does Prophet Muhammad and the gurus have to do with me and him?
Because you're following the gurus.
No, that's them two compare each other. That's cool.
Why do
No,
I
no.
know this guy?
Exactly, I don't know him
No,
either.
brother.
That has nothing to do with him.
Brother, your standard of morality
No, you can
is the
say
gurus.
that. No,
And
you.
his leadership.
It's not Muhammad. That's what I'm saying. So my standard, for example, is Jesus. Yes. Right? But
Honestly,
still to this day,
I've heard that's just a regional thing. Like because I was born there, my family will see. That's why it happened. But what I'm saying is, I don't walk around emulating them. I could be a bad guy anyway. You know what I mean?
But then-
I believe they were better than me.
absolutely.
Okay.
So that's why they're your standard.
No. Let's be honest. No offense to the Muslims. I think the gurus
What do
are
you mean by mature? That's my question. now. You say back-
what's it
back
called?
then-
Morally.
I understand superior to Muhammad, absolutely.
Maybe not the word superior, but I would rather follow them in my heart.
That's what I
Because
said.
I'd rather defend them in a debate. Is what my
That's
point
what I
is.
said.
Yeah. But I'm saying that's nothing to do with me and him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I'm saying that
I get it.
you should not fight about it. However,
Yeah.
the reason why he's okay with this idea and you are not is because of the standard of morality. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, one thing
No
that
one used to, well, not the word.
I do.
beautiful.
The difference between me and him is he thinks Muhammad
That kind of
is
puts
I think
the soul thing. But
Both
I,
sides.
yeah. But I do agree with him that back then in my opinion.
I understand.
You agree though, yeah.
I don't.
But I can give
So,
my perspective down.
like I said before, I agree that it happened.
Yeah,
I
back-
agree.
A lot more back then. Yeah.
I agree it happened. I disagree that it's correct.
The children of
And so do your gurus.
So do I.
Belongs to the children.
Yeah, of course.
That's it.
Anyone
Of
you
course.
possess
I'm not making any other kind of arguments.
for harm,
Yeah. No. Fair enough. The only reason I was putting a span in the works is like when you said I got higher.
Anyone who-
Standard of morality than he does. Yes, you do.
And for 600 years, people were already.
Did your gurus own-
and the
own
culture has
slaves?
already shifted from age.
No.
Did they sleep with kids?
And the standard,
Did they sell slaves?
Each at that time.
No.
The
Did they war and kill people?
They killed people.
Did they war and kill people? Did they start wars and kill people?
Started from like
It was only in defense.
But Muhammad took them back.
All right.